everyone, welcome back to Seeking What They Sought, and I am here with Anthony as usual, and our special guest today is Judelle McCormick. And Judelle is someone we've known for a long time. By the way, Jesse and Erik are not here.
They
They're
bailed on us
jerks.
today.
Losers.
Yeah, I was really tempted to say
Exactly,
something
Judelle.
really mean about them, but I'm not going to stoop to their level today.
Well, Judelle just said losers.
I just said
Yeah.
losers.
Oh,
So
well, I missed that. I was too
There it
I was too
is.
busy being nice. But I will let Judelle say that. Obviously, you can tell that Judelle knows Jesse and Erik well, and the reason for that is we went to college together at Walla Walla University, the land of the onions, home of the brave. That's their official slogan there in Walla Walla, right? Home of the
Mhm.
onions.
I
Home of the
forgot
brave.
about that.
Something like
it's
that.
so good you say
Anthony,
it twice. I think they
Anthony,
say that. Yeah.
Anthony, that's a
Anyway.
lie. You just said forgot about that, like you thought that was a real thing, and I just made that up on the spot.
Oh, okay. That's what I was like, I don't know what that is, but I guess it's real. I trusted you, Sean.
You should not.
You're so trustworthy.
That was your first mistake. But Jesse and Erik couldn't make it. We'll see if Jesse can a little bit later. But for now, it's going to be Anthony and Judelle. But Judelle worked with us at Walla Walla, forming a student-led church. We actually did an episode on it a few years ago, talking about Circle Church, which is actually still going on there at Walla Walla University, which is really cool. It's kind of crazy that it's been going on for so long, well over a decade at this point,
That's
which
weird.
makes
Yeah,
me
it's
feel
wild.
really old.
Yeah.
Really old.
Yeah, we're
And
old as heck.
Judelle, you were there at the beginning.
are.
You got to know us. And at that point, I think when you came on the team, was Shelby there already, or is it just you as the lone girl on the team? I'm trying to
I
remember.
think Shelby
Was Shelby
was
there at that
there.
point?
Yeah.
Shelby
yeah,
was
I
there.
think Shelby was there. Yeah.
But it was just you two.
Thankfully.
And then this group of, oh, and who?
Oh, I just said
She said
thankfully she
thankfully.
was there. Yeah.
Oh, thankfully,
Otherwise-
yeah. No, but, well, I know the rest of us, it was just the group of these idiots that, like, I don't know if Circle Church would have survived without the counterbalance of,
Oh,
you
no,
know,
not
you
definitely
two,
not.
Shelby and Judelle, because we were too stupid. We were.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still bad, but if any of you that have listened to us long enough, if you think we're dumb now, imagine college,
yeah.
and it's about 25
Imagine-
times worse.
19-year-old this.
Yeah, it's a lot worse.
It's
So
fine.
Judelle,
You guys were like the visionaries, and we kept you grounded. So it's fine. It's a good balance.
Hey,
that is a
Amen. Kept us
really
grounded.
nice way. That is
That's
the
so nice
nicest,
of you to-
diplomatic. That is a very principled answer, and I should
don't-
say that because Judelle is a principal. You are a principal at an Adventist school,
Mhm.
Paulsbo Adventist School to be specific. You're located in the Pacific Northwest, where we all grew up and loved. And Judelle, that's kind of wild to me that we were all
It's
just
crazy.
students together, and now we're all just doing stuff like pastors, teachers, principals.
know.
We're
and
the old
that's our lives
adults
now.
that we looked up to when we were in like high school. Judelle, that's you.
I
You're a
know.
literal principal. That's
Yeah.
crazy. How
I
does
know
it feel?
it is crazy. I can't believe it sometimes. It's a lot of
So nuts.
responsibility, but it's no, it's good. It feels like a good place to be right now.
Mm.
It's a good way to make a difference, I think.
Yeah.
Mm.
We'll talk about that. And I'm going into my 10th year of teaching, and I've been doing junior high. I've talked about that a bit. Just the craziness of teacher life, and Judelle, I'm trying to remember if we took any education classes together at Walla Walla. I know that you graduated 2016. Is that right? Or 2017? Which year did you graduate Walla Walla?
So I didn't do education, actually. I was biology, pre-med.
Oh, I totally forgot
Oh.
about
So
that.
that's why we didn't do any education classes together.
Okay, that's
So, yeah.
okay.
I was 2015 was undergrad, and then I did my master's in 2017.
Nice.
Gotcha. Okay. Man, yeah. I forgot about why we didn't overlap in any of those classes together, but that's really interesting. So actually, that brings me up to a point. I want to hear your journey a bit. You also, where did you grow up, Judelle? Like as a kid, before you came to Walla Walla, before we met you, like where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I grew up on a little island called Pohnpei. And a lot of people in the Adventist world know Pohnpei because we send a lot of student missionaries to Pohnpei.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not Pohnpeian by birth. I'm actually Sri
Mm.
Lankan, but my parents are missionaries to Pohnpei, long-term missionaries. So being a missionary kid, I was taught by missionaries my whole life, and it was Adventist
Yeah.
education,
Yeah.
K through 12, with the exception of a couple years in India. Um, but
Mm.
but yeah, it was mostly, you know, college students from Walla Walla that were
Mhm.
my teachers, K through 12. So that's honestly kind of how I ended up at Walla Walla University because a lot of my teachers were from Walla Walla.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
That's such a unique experience of being in a missionary setting like that. And you know, like I remember how you know, Anthony, there were hundreds from Walla Walla that would go out and take a year off,
Mhm.
including my
Mhm.
wife. You know, she went to Yap in Micronesia and had a similar experience where she was a college kid being the teacher, right? And that kind of out of body
yeah,
experience. But you had it in reverse where those were your teachers. Did you
yeah,
consciously think about that? Like, this is not, that was your normal, was to have
Mhm.
Walla Walla kids being your teachers. Did that feel
yeah.
normal? Did that feel, you know, did that feel weird, or was it just, it was normal? It was just what you expected because that's what you grew up with.
I think when I was younger, it was just kind of like, this is it. This is my life. But I think as I got older in high school, they were, you know, they were pretty
Mhm.
close in age to us. In high school, it was kind of
Mm.
Yeah.
weird being taught by
Mhm.
Yeah.
people that were only a few years older than you. And I remember feeling kind of the gravity of the situation, feeling, wow, these people gave up a year of their life to come teach us. And I thought that was really
Mm.
Mhm.
special. So I, you know, actually always wanted to be a missionary, a student missionary, but I never got the chance to. Um, but I can share more of how my current school actually kind of helps in that area, which is nice, helps that dream a little
Mm.
bit for me.
Did you
Yeah, for
ever,
sure.
having experienced college and having been a college student and having known how much college students were just, like, figuring it out right when we're in that stage of life, a lot of times we have no idea what we're doing, we're just flying by the seat of our pants.
Yeah.
Did you looking back, are you ever just like, "Hmm, did I get a subpar education
I
because
didn't
my
learn
teachers."
squat for 12 years. That's what Anthony's asking.
I'm not
Yeah.
saying you didn't, I'm
Yes.
wondering, yeah, did you ever feel that way?
It's interesting. I think it depends on the teacher, and I think I was really blessed to have a lot of student missionaries who were there who really wanted to make a difference and who took
Mm.
it seriously. But my dad worked for the school, and he, you know, he'd get upset at the teachers who were there just to go surfing or, you know, things
Mm.
like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, like I said, I feel like I was very blessed to have some teachers who were there because they cared and they wanted to do their best. And yeah, it probably
Mm.
wasn't the best that it could have been. Um,
Mhm.
but some of my teachers in high school who taught me science, I went into the sciences in
Mhm.
Walla Walla. So some of the teachers who taught me science subjects in high school were from Walla Walla, and they honestly kind of modeled their classes to the same way that the professors at Walla Walla were doing. And I feel like that
Mm.
helped me a lot when I came to college.
Wow.
So I don't know. There's I guess there's, you know,
Pros and
positives and
cons.
negatives to that. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
That's what interests me as you say that. Is it sounds like, just from your tone, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you felt like when you look back, it feels like you had an overall positive experience from being there on Pohnpei, getting your Adventist education. Like you have good memories. You feel like it was enough to
Prepared
prepare
you.
you and interest you in what you wanted to do in life when it came to purpose. Is that fair?
Yes. I would say
Yeah.
so, and I think it really depends on, like I said, the teachers, my parents were pushing my brother and I to, you know,
Mhm.
really, you know, you have to leave the island. Not a lot of people do. You have to leave the island. You got to go get an education. You got to go get a good job, and that's not the mentality there. So yeah, I think
Mm.
like I said, I think I was blessed in a very unique
Mhm.
position with, you know, the
Mm.
circumstances that I was in.
Yeah. Yeah. That is interesting. I maybe my last point before we move on after Pohnpei and getting to Walla Walla eventually in college. Um, when you look at that also, is does it feel like there's anything from that setting specifically that you'd pull and say, okay, now that you're, in the States, you're in a part of Adventist education where like you need to have some level of a degree, right? You're not going to hire literal college students to be your staff or
Yeah.
work, that would not be, that would be frowned upon, if even legal, barely legal to do in any um, Adventist school here in North America. That just doesn't happen. That's not a mission experience, right? Is there
Mm-mm.
anything from that experience or the vibe or the way that you experienced Adventist education there that you wish could happen more here, that you might think
Mm.
we're missing from that experience?
Hmm. That's a good question. I feel like I've said it before. I think it just depends on the individual, and
Hmm.
maybe it
Mm.
was deeper than that. I don't know. Maybe it was the leadership at the school in Pohnpei who were, they were really encouraging and driving the teachers to be very intentional in
Yeah.
how
Mm.
they, went about teaching us, and
Mhm.
how, what example they set for us. It was, I was a campus kid. I lived on campus. So I was
Mm.
around these
Mhm.
teachers all the time. So it wasn't just like it was their job and then
Yeah.
they, went home. They did go home,
Right.
but I was, around, and they
Hmm.
they led by example. It was, their life was mission minded that whole year, and hopefully
Yeah.
after
Mm.
that. And it was just a lifestyle. And I don't, I don't know if a lot of people here take it that seriously,
Hmm. Hmm.
Mm.
because
Yeah.
I think when you're out there as a student missionary, you know that people are looking at you and looking to you, um, just in your everyday life, not only at work. And I think that, you know, teachers here need to do that too. It's a lifestyle, and you got to lead by example. And that's a lesson that I'm learning too. There's things that my school, my
Mm.
very conservative school, doesn't allow, like, I
Mhm.
don't know, like wearing nail polish or jewelry or things like that. And,
Mm. Mhm.
um, so I have to learn, well, I have to lead by example in a lot of these areas. And if I want to be teaching my students, this is the kind of person I want you to be, then I also have to be upholding that expectation for myself.
Mm.
I guess high school Anthony couldn't have been at that school because he was wearing lots of nail polish
Yeah,
during the
that's
angsty
true.
teen years.
You wouldn't catch me dead without my black nail polish, Judelle. I
That
would have gotten
emo
in
kid,
trouble.
yeah.
The emo era, yeah, you caught the tail end as I was coming to Walla Walla. That's true.
Oh, that's
Ooh.
hilarious.
But I hear what you're saying. You're saying that growing up in that environment, what you experienced was a lot of teachers who teaching was, like, missional for them, and it was a whole lifestyle that they lived, and it sounds like you kind of internalized that, so now when you're a principal now and a teacher now you kind of feel like that same ethos that was modeled for you, like, "Wow, I have to live this out as a lifestyle, not just, like, a list of things, in a handbook, but I actually have to live if I wanna lead."
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So we spent a bit of time kind of looking into, that upbringing. I think it's unique what you have to share. And I think some people might look at the Adventist world outside of the US and feel like it's this different beast. No, no pun intended. There's a lot
Mm.
of beast imagery in Adventism, but there's a view, and we've actually had people ask us to have people on that are more from a global perspective. I know that for us, that's sometimes
Mhm.
a struggle
Yeah.
because we don't. This is our experience of Adventism. Is a lot of the people we know to contact to have discussions with were from around our area. Um,
Yeah.
but I think it's great having you on just because although you did come over for college, you spent a large chunk of your life in that mission field, in that experience somewhere else outside the US, experiencing not
Mhm.
just in the school system, but just church. What Adventism to you may have felt different. And that
Yeah.
could be probably a whole other topic, honestly, with you, just talking
Mm.
Yeah.
about your experience in Adventism before Walla Walla and then coming to Walla Walla. Man, I'm very tempted to go into that, but I know that would take a long time just on its own.
I feel like we
But
have to
That
at
would
least ask, like, a
that would.
single thing, like,
yeah,
Judelle,
you do
like,
it, Anthony. Anthony, find a way to do it in 5
okay,
minutes or less, and I'll let you do it.
okay,
Because I agree. I'm very tempted to go down that road a little bit.
well, maybe the question, Judelle, is, like, you didn't grow up in the US for your formative years,
Mhm.
right? And then you moved here later, and so I'm imagining you experienced kind of 2 different Adventisms. I don't wanna project that onto you, but you tell me if that's correct,
Oh,
and I'm curious
yeah.
what that was like.
Oh, I 100% did, and it was, a weird culture shock in a lot of ways. I
Ooh, yeah, tell us.
I mentioned a little bit that my parents well, I was born in Sri Lanka, so that was like a thing all on its own. The culture in Sri Lanka is so
Mm,
different, and then we have Pohnpei, which is where I grew up, and then I
mhm,
moved, to Walla Walla. There's so many, ways in which all of those things clash. A
mm,
big thing for me, I think, and I had to, work through this personally, was the Sabbath. The Sabbath is
Hmm.
regarded
mhm,
in, very different ways in all three of these cultures.
Hmm.
And I just remember this I have this memory in my mind where as I mentioned, I grew up on the campus. And so the student missionaries one day, one Sabbath, were just throwing around a football. And my dad was livid that they were doing
ooh,
this
yeah,
Hmm.
because you don't do that on the Sabbath, in that
Sure.
mm,
culture, in the Sri
Sure.
yeah,
Lankan and even the Pohnpeian culture, you don't do that. Um, and I remember, moving to Walla Walla and going to like Rooks Park or Pioneer Park or something like that and
Hmm.
seeing
you bust out
people,
the
kick
Frisbee.
around a soccer ball or throwing a frisbee. And I was like,
Just involved in blatant
Mm,
debauchery all the time.
debauchery. Oh
Who
man,
are these
heathen.
hooligans? Yeah.
No, but it was a big culture shock, and,
Yeah.
mm,
yeah, I feel like there's other pieces here and there, like dancing. Dancing
mm,
culturally is, like, a huge part of the culture in Pohnpei, a huge part of the culture in Sri
Hmm.
Lanka, but it's a
mm,
big no-no here. Um,
interesting,
like, if you even mention dancing,
Yeah.
people are like, "Oh my goodness."
right,
Um, but But yeah, it was weird and it was, hard to adjust to those things, but I feel like I had to do, like I said, a lot of self-work to figure out where the
mm,
happy
Sure.
medium was for me personally because you have,
Yeah.
a whole background, and then you have the current setting of the culture here. So, yeah, it was a little bit of a
wow,
culture shock.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that, Judel, is you were on a very different life path than us in that those experiences, but at the same time, that journey that you just described at the end of figuring out, where you're at when you look at your two experiences, like finding in the middle where you're at, what do I take
Yeah,
from both sides that's valuable, that we can relate to because we experienced the same, right? When we grew up Adventist, there might have
right.
been some different, some of those relatable. I think sports I can definitely relate to a certain degree. At least in my context, I usually saw it as you couldn't play competitive sports on Sabbath, but say you're at
Yep.
a park throwing a frisbee or a baseball or a football was okay. It just couldn't be an
Mhm.
organized game. There was some sort of threshold there
mhm,
of if you're in an official game with an ump or a ref, or a uniform on, you've sinned and
it
broken the
becomes
Sabbath. But
evil.
if you're wearing flip-flops at the park and playing the same exact game, it is okay in God's eyes, which that is
Yeah.
probably its own bad explanations episode, Anthony, that we'll have to talk
Yeah,
about at
for
some
sure,
point.
we'll have to put that
But
in the vault.
um but what I'm saying is, Judel, we had the same experience of we had to a certain point deconstruct our Adventism, figure out
Yeah.
what were valuable foundations, and some of it stayed,
Mm,
some of it from our that maybe we rejected at some point. Now we circle back around and say, you know what, there is some value here, and then
mhm,
Mhm.
also saying, but also the new pieces that I'm getting as I get older
Yeah.
and I experience a new culture. There are some valuable things there too to balance out what I see my faith looking like when it comes to
Mhm.
expressing that. So I think that's relatable to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
so we spent a lot of time, Anthony, kind of talking with Judelle about college already, the Circle Church experience.
mhm,
Uh, but I have to at least mention Paul for
mhm.
a second. Your last name is Judelle McCormick. We knew you as Judelle Johnson.
Yep.
We've known
We
you for a
did.
while, but I've known Paul. Uh, an obscene amount of time, and I say obscene because our friendship is obscene.
Obscene.
Really, it's bad at all of us. But I've known Paul since about third grade, second grade, somewhere early off.
Wow.
There's a picture of us from as long as history goes back. There's a picture of us doing these iconic poses, and we took the same pose through the years.
Oh my
So
goodness. I
yeah,
love it. I have to
it
see
goes it
those.
goes way back. But I have to shout out Paul, your husband.
Oh yeah,
Paul, if you're listening,
we have love for Paul.
we'll send you some stuff because we have a special group thread with me and Paul and Anthony and
We
Jesse and
do.
Eric. It's a very
Oh boy.
special, sacred
Sa-
thread that we've had for over a decade.
I don't know
Indeed.
if you can call it sacred.
We call it for the
I
for
don't think
those
you should.
listening.
Judelle knows.
For those listening, there's this thing that we literally call the garbage thread, and we share the best and brightest of the internet
Oh yeah.
content to each other there, and we have for literally decades at this point.
Yep.
So, but I miss the good times. I really do. I miss both you and your husband and all the good times we had throughout the years. So I'm
Oh, it
just this
was
old
fun.
man sitting back here reminiscing about the fun
It
times.
is.
They were fun
But we,
times. Yeah.
Yeah.
but we should ask you, Judelle, kind of about your experience, because we're in the series about education, and we're curious for you, as an Adventist principal of a small school. We know that
Mhm.
Sean had compiled some statistics here. We know that over 60% of NAD SDA schools are small, which is defined as 2 to 3 teachers with multi-grade classrooms. And
Yeah.
you work at such a school. And so we're just
Yep.
curious, what is it like, I guess, first of all, just in an overall sense, like being a principal at a small school? Do you find like you're doing everything? You're scrubbing the toilets and grading papers and, sending report cards, or,
Yeah.
what has been your experience like?
It is, yeah, it's kind of like you described just there. It is kind of everything. As I was thinking about this, I was like, I have two full-time jobs, I think. I have the teacher
Mm,
job and I have the principal job.
Mm-hmm.
But then I was like, oh my goodness, there's so many other hats as well
Yeah.
there.
mm,
Um, we don't have a secretary because it is a small school. So I am, answering phone calls. I have the
wow.
the main
You're the
line
secretary.
directed to my actual cell
Mm-hmm.
phone. Yeah, so I'm the secretary.
Wow.
File the paperwork, make the copies. Thankfully, we have a janitor, so I don't have to scrub the toilets.
Yeah.
But restocking supplies and buying playground equipment or
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Principal stuff, visioning for the school and making sure everything's running smoothly, and personnel issues or disciplinary issues. And then, of
Mm,
course, teacher, has a lot of things too. If you're mm, well, we have two teachers at our school. So if you're this one of the two
wow.
adults in the room, you are also the nurse. You are the lunch
Mm.
lady. You're
Is that,
the
sorry to
counselor.
interrupt, Judelle,
Oh, it's
is
okay.
that two teachers including you, or two other ones
Two
and you?
including myself. Yeah, two including
Oh
me.
wow.
So yeah, it's I teach 5th through 8th grade, and then the other teacher teaches 1st through 4th grade.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
wild to me, Judel. It's wild to me that like that statistic. I didn't fully understand. Like, I read somewhere a while back, just like 60 to 70% of all Adventist schools in North America are small schools. But then it defined that, like Anthony said, as 2 to 3 teachers. You're in that category. You've
That's
got 2
nuts.
teachers at your school. That is
yep.
the majority of Adventist education. Like, just let that sink in for a second. That is I wouldn't
Yeah.
say most people, because if you think of the numbers, like I don't know, like if you take the total body of
Hmm.
students, I don't know what the breakdown there is for like how many are in
Yeah.
larger schools versus there, but at least in terms of pure buildings, like how many, specific schools we have,
Hmm.
60%
Hmm.
or more. I even heard someone say 70% is a
Wow.
small school, a multi-grade classroom. That is so wild to me because Anthony and I didn't grow up. Well, Anthony, I don't know if before Auburn, if you experienced a small
I
school. Have
did.
you?
I did, but my school, I guess, was a larger one compared to this because mine had 4 teachers total, I believe,
Hmm.
instead of 2. So mine had 4 teachers. We had like 40 kids
Yeah.
max.
Okay.
But still pretty small. That's still on this,
Pretty small. Yeah.
smaller, slightly
Yeah.
larger, small school. But Yeah, I never had that full experience. Most of the schools I went to, from kindergarten up were somewhat big. Like there was a teacher for every separate class. I never
Right.
lived in the multi-grade space ever
Well,
in my academic experience. So I never felt that. Um,
He's
yeah.
so that's
privileged, you know.
very privileged. Yes. But actually
Yeah.
that brings me to the point of, is that actually a privilege? Do you think, as you know a teaching principal, and you described the many hats that you wear,
Mm,
do you feel that there's something unique or special about that small school experience?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for all you know, the work that it is, um, I think it's a really beautiful way to do education. And I think there's a
mm,
reason that a lot of our schools are this way. Um,
mhm,
Multi-grade, I feel like it has so many benefits, but the biggest one I can think of right now is that, you have kids from multiple age levels and abilities and,
Mhm.
backgrounds and, whatever
mhm.
together in the same room. And they're more often than not learning from each other,
Yeah.
and they're learning how
Mm,
to interact with each other, which is just like what they're going to experience in real life. You're never going to be in a situation as
mm.
an adult with everybody around you that's the same age. You're going to have to learn to work with people and
Right.
Yeah.
understand people that are of different ages and abilities.
Yeah.
And so it's preparing them in the best way in that sense
Mm,
to be able to interact and do life and be, good citizens that can contribute to society.
Mhm.
mhm,
Um, and and with such a small student body, I feel like they form these relationships and you see them over the years. I have a
mhm.
student now. I've been at this school for this will be my 6th year that I'm starting there. I've
Wow.
had her since 1st grade and she'll be in 6th
Wow.
6th grade. And you form these relationships with these students, these bonds, and they form relationships and bonds with each other. And it's
Mm.
truly like a family. I mean, they bicker a lot like a family does too, like siblings,
Mhm.
but they learn about each other, the best and the worst about each other. And
Mhm,
Mhm.
it's such a beautiful atmosphere. I love it. I feel like it's such a great way to do learning.
Yeah.
I mean, there's negatives too. There's a lot that I could say about how it doesn't work, but that's what I love about teaching, and I've only ever taught in multi-grade schools, and I didn't
mhm,
experience multi-grade education when I was younger, like you guys, or more like Sean, I
mhm,
guess. It was just single grade all the way through.
Mhm.
So this is such a
mhm,
great experience for me, I feel, and I've really liked it.
Yeah. I think I would actually say there's some of the best potential for Adventist education happens in a small school and a
mm,
multi-grade classroom.
I love
Um,
it.
Maybe some of the disadvantages, and if you want to speak to some of them, would probably be is if it's not set up intentionally, it can become chaos,
mm,
or it can,
Yeah,
it can be where the learning can lose its direction if a teacher isn't set up in a thoughtful, prepared way, and expectations are clear about what a multi-grade classroom should look like.
yeah,
And that can happen both ways, where the students can kind of feel like, I don't know what to do here, I'm lost. And then at the same time, the teacher can feel that way, overwhelmed.
yeah,
There is a reality that teachers get burnt out fast. Now, I don't know if
mm,
that's exclusive to small schools. I think that's just across the board, not even just in Adventist educations. Teachers, the burnout rate is so high, to the point where
mm.
I don't have the statistic in front of me, but a while back I had heard, by year 3 of teaching, about half of teachers quit by year 3.
um,
Mm,
Um, and that kind of seems to be the sweet spot, the turning point. Like if you can make it past year 3, like you're probably in it.
mm,
Like you're probably in it for
okay,
a reason beyond just survival. A lot of people sometimes will, at least in the past, sometimes the reputation was someone would fall back on education as like a fallback. Oh, if it doesn't work out in this field, I'll just become a teacher.
mhm,
Kind of that reputation. And
yeah,
I kind of laugh at that because I just imagine, like, if you show up at a classroom thinking this is your fallback after not doing well in something else, like this is gonna really suck for you. Like this is not somewhere to be if you don't really want to do it. And that's not to
Oh,
say that
yeah.
it's miserable all the time teaching. I don't want to paint it that way. But
Mhm.
there is so much, like you described, Judelle, that you couldn't just get trained for in college or with a degree.
Mm.
It's
You
true.
just, especially year one is just a trial by fire, whether you're a principal or a teacher, a small or big classroom or school. It is a lot of chaos learning how things can become sustainable and how to be a meaningful, impactful teacher. And so,
Yeah.
I feel like
yeah.
I want to ask you, Judel, like how do you mentioned this is your 6th year. What has kept you from burnout all these years in the game
Hmm.
and wearing all these multiple hats, doing all these things.
Mhm.
You're the principal, but you're also the teacher. I'm sure the list of things that you're responsible for is long. What keeps you energized and excited? And yeah,
Yeah. That's a good question. There's so many things that I could throw out buzzwords like self-care and all of
right.
those things. And that is true. I think you do have to take care of yourself. There's things that I've had to put in place, like, okay, I'm not going to answer a text or a call when I get home. Or,
Mm,
I won't answer a parent at all on the weekends or, things like that. Um,
mm.
or,
Is that hard to do? Do people ever get upset at you for having
um,
those boundaries?
I would say no, because I start off the year saying these are my office hours. Don't expect
Mm.
me to respond outside of my office hours.
Mm.
Mhm.
Um,
Nice.
yeah, but so I mean, but I had to learn that, I didn't start off that
Yeah.
way. I
Mm.
had a parent texting me at midnight my first year,
Oof.
Oh, it's
and
the
like it wasn't
Oh.
just
worst.
I didn't have my phone on silent apparently, so I woke up anyways. It was like
Yeah.
3 texts at once. So anyways, these
Mhm.
there are things that I've had to learn and put in place, and I this last year I tried really hard to not work on Sundays, which I know
Hmm.
it's like,
Mm.
what? How do you do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to manage your
Mhm.
time really, really well, and I have to push myself to plan and do other things when I'm really tired at the end of the day, after teaching, for a whole
Mm.
day to sit down and put aside time to lesson plan. So it's, drawing a lot of boundaries, and you do get really, really, really exhausted. And I'm sure that's the
Mm.
experience of every teacher out there. By the time summer comes along, you're just kind of crawling.
Yeah.
Mm.
but but what really helps, I think, is your support system too. Putting those boundaries in and having a
Mm.
good support system, a good spouse. Paul's amazing. He's a good teacher husband
What a
and
guy.
very understanding.
What a guy.
Um, Having a good supportive school board. I know I'm very uniquely blessed, I feel, to have a very good supportive school board who
Mm.
is, I feel like, 100% behind me and, anything I want to do. And even a good church. We have a pretty good supportive church. The parents at the school, I've had, minimal problems with parents and students.
Mm.
So that whole, all those pieces put together, I feel help with the experience. And then, of course, realizing this is what I really want to do and keep reminding myself there's
Mm.
probably
Yeah.
nothing else that I would rather be doing. So
Wow.
you, you know, this is what you love, and you have to remember that even on the bad days. And
Yeah.
thankfully, Paul helps me remember that. So that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. That you mentioned too, like that is something very special because I think
Mm.
a school, especially an Adventist school, lives and dies by that support group, that support system, just for you personally, but also for the school's health. Um, Having a church, having a board, like people don't always see the behind the scenes stuff that goes into running
Mm.
and operating a school. It's not
It's
like the
true.
principal calls all the shots. Like there's a school board that does a lot, um, an Adventist school can't just, like, a conference can't come in as like this governmental system, at least in practice. Well, in theory. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too far, but it's written and designed that a school is meant to be connected to a church, to the point where for a school, like for instance, for a school to get shut down, if there's a classic thing in Adventist education is if there's a struggle with enrollment or finances or something else, and unfortunately, there's times where a school has to close, or there's a question of that. The responsibility actually lies with the church for that to officially take place. And I don't know if people always understand like how that process works, or like how schools operate. Like, it involves a team, it involves a system of
Mm.
support to make things happen and to work things out. So it's not just a principal coming in and calling all the shots. There's a lot that goes into making Adventist schools work. Um, and so that's a blessing that you have that experience, because many sometimes don't. Or maybe it's kind of a mixed bag where there is some
Mhm.
support, but then there's sometimes a rift. And we talked about this with Larry Blackmer, who was the former VP of Education for the NAD, and
Uh-huh.
how sometimes there is this kind of like there's this there's this divide between churches and the
Okay.
pastor and maybe the church with a school system. And I don't know,
Yeah,
as a principal, Judelle, like if there's ever an appeal, or sometimes a thing where you go to a church asking for support, or asking, because the reality is a church financially supports you know the school.
they
So
do,
your
yeah.
church supports the school financially. And I don't know, it sounds like your experience is positive overall with maybe the members and the people of that church, but
Yeah.
sometimes there's a bit of animosity, or there's a bit of awkwardness or tension with,
Little
like, hey,
tension.
we're taking money from you guys to operate this, you know
Yeah.
um
Yeah,
but I don't know how it feels on your end as an educator to be on that receiving end.
I think that there can be, and there's I think there can be some, awkwardness among some church members, and there has been, a little bit of that,
Mhm.
Mm.
because our church, doesn't have is not doing the best, financially,
Sure.
and I'm sure a lot of churches struggle as well, and sometimes, the school
Yeah.
Oh,
board
yeah.
does feel bad, you know, asking for a certain subsidy, but it's kind of the
Mhm.
church. That's what they've committed to doing, to supporting the school.
Yeah.
But there can
Mm.
be some awkwardness sometimes, and yeah, there has been a little bit, here and there, where I've just kind of had to be like, remind myself it's just one or two people that are saying
Mm.
Sure.
things, or you know, saying how we should be putting our money somewhere else, and sometimes that is the
Right.
view that some people have,
Mm.
why are we doing this? And they don't understand necessarily the mission of the school, or even the church, by helping the school. And it
Mhm.
does
Mm.
get discouraging sometimes. It really does. And like I said, I have to remind myself it's just a few people who believe that.
Mhm.
And that is the impression that I get. It's most of the people, and, the congregation at large, they are
Mhm.
really supportive, and they believe in the school's mission. And,
Mhm.
Mm.
sometimes we have school programs where church members will just show up to support the students, and they have no connection
Yeah.
Mhm.
whatsoever with the students.
Yeah.
Our
Mm.
school is actually mostly
Yeah.
non-Adventist. Um, we have
Oh, I
we
didn't know
have
Oh,
that.
20
okay.
yeah, we have about 20. We might have like 23 students this coming year, and
Mhm.
two of them attend our church. So the
Wow.
rest of
Okay.
them are community members. So like I said, most of the church members truly believe in the school as a mission, for
Wow.
the church. And they're like, we will put everything behind this. And we do get wonderful support, just in terms of, monetary support, or even people wanting to volunteer, or people just showing up, like I said, at events. Um, yeah, but yeah, it's just very rarely we will get the
Wow.
occasional person who is
Yeah. That.
You
that's
talked
interesting.
Yeah, you go, Sean.
I was just gonna say really quick, that's fascinating to me. I didn't realize that your school was vast majority non-Adventist.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Um, and that, we grew up going to school with people that weren't Adventist, but I guess in my context, I remember, again, for grade school, high school, majority or probably at least half. I don't
Same.
know if I was keeping track, but it felt like most
Yeah.
people were Adventist or in that
Oh, yeah.
circle to some point. And it's in the past. It's interesting to me as I've had discussions with other schools that have a high percentage of non-Adventists. Sometimes that's been a point of criticism for the school of not
Oh,
being
Mm.
Adventist enough. And
yeah.
I've
Mhm.
always found that strange to me personally because of what you just said, is that the potential for mission, right? To share what's valuable about this system, about this this belief and
Mhm.
faith culture and Adventism, the potential is so ripe, right? For people to
Yeah,
to see what it is. Not just for the students, but sometimes the families, the parents, the others
absolutely.
around to see, what things are like. But it's interesting at times that people criticize. I'm curious, has that ever come up? I'm wondering, has that ever even been a thing for your? It sounds like the church is excited that so many are not
Mhm.
Adventist to be a mission field, but
Sounds super supportive.
yeah, is
They
there ever a
are.
criticism that it's not Adventist enough?
It's not anything that I feel like has been vocalized to me, but, it can be. I have wondered, I guess, because there are some children in the church who don't attend the school, and they're being
Mm.
homeschooled
Yeah, yeah,
and,
right.
when as we
Mhm.
talk to the parents, they, "Well, no, we've committed to homeschooling them."
Sure.
Um,
Mhm.
but I've heard, kind of not probably not in this church, but in other areas. Yeah, we had to pull our children from that school because there were too many non-Adventists in that school. And
Hmm.
and
Mm.
I guess I understand, parents not wanting their children to be around children who might be quote unquote bad influences.
Like influence,
But
yeah.
Hmm.
I just feel like you said, Sean, the potential for the mission aspect of that is
Yeah.
just so much greater than that fear, in my
Mm.
opinion. And it's sad that that's a thought.
Well, and there's two things there. The point that you just made was it's a value for the school system, right? For the church to support that to happen, and for you as teachers to embrace that demographic of non-Adventists. But I would actually respond to the parents that are maybe fearful of that bad influence. Is there's such a potential there for it being a blessing because
Yeah.
to get out of that Adventist echo chamber to experience other people's thoughts. And of course,
Mm.
like you are still an Adventist school. The teachers have to be Adventist. The identity and
Yeah.
ethos of what your mission is, that's not different here, right? Your school is rooted in leaders, you and your other teacher, about what this school is about. So when those bad things happen, when something does happen with a student that says this or does that, you're still going to come back to what the school is about. You're going to course correct as those students make those choices. And
Mm.
so
Mhm.
in fact that gives the Adventist students an even greater opportunity to understand what is it that I believe.
Yeah.
And in
Mm.
some ways I
When the
envy that
bad kid brings
experience.
their Pokemon cards to school.
Well, I mean, we did that in Adventism too. I mean, we just hit it
Yeah,
really
I
well.
definitely did.
I got mine thrown away, and I've talked about that before,
Same.
Anthony.
So
Um,
mad.
Wow.
but I want to say though, like I envy that really because my wife Rochelle, she went to a Christian school, but she was one of two Adventists at the school, and it was a larger school, larger Christian school, and she said that that was a great experience because um, she grew up in a family that was very rooted in belief and knowing her faith and owning it, and that led to Bible studies with her teachers and her fellow classmates that led to like, hey, what is it that you believe? And that pushed her to really think about what is it that makes me an
Mm.
Adventist? And that's not a
Mhm.
question that came up for me years later past she did because she went to a school that wasn't surrounded by Adventist students. So I actually think, my answer to a parent would be that it's it's going to be a great opportunity. It's got its own
Mm.
challenges, but there's also so much potential to for your child to learn what it means from these great teachers
Yeah.
and from this school and from these other kids that might push back a bit. Like, what does it mean that you're an Adventist? What is that weird
Mm.
stuff you do? Um,
Mhm.
Yeah.
so,
I
Anthony, I
agree.
cut you off. Anthony, I cut you off. You had something to share.
Yeah, Judelle, you kind of alluded to it just now when you were talking about like the mission of the school. And I guess I was curious because we've been asking all of our guests in this series about what do they believe about the goal of Adventist education? Like
Mhm.
what's the goal, the mission, the end product that is being produced? And I guess I was curious, in your words, what would you say is the goal of Adventist education to you?
I think that we are teaching for eternity. I always like to say I would love to
Mm,
see my students in heaven. I think that's the end goal.
Mhm.
mm,
I think, we can equip them to be the best they can be, the best contributing members they can be on earth. But I would
mm.
like the end goal is heaven. That's where we want to see them. And I hope that, everything that we teach them here in this school will, allow them to be able to experience that. And yeah, I want to see them in heaven.
Mm,
Mm.
mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very simple answer, Sean. I think that's been the most
To the
clear, no,
point.
yeah, not in a negative way, Judelle, the most clear and simple. Like, others have, given us paragraphs and intellectual whatever, whatever, but
Yeah.
wow.
There's so much behind it too, I feel, but I think that's the ultimate goal for me.
Mm,
Yeah.
That's one of the good things about you. You teach in elementary. Your junior high. I taught 5 through 8 last year. I know that crowd very well. And if you can't say it in 5 seconds or less, you've lost them.
they're gone.
Um, and that
It's
that
true.
humbles you in such a deep and profound way because
Oh,
there's
yeah.
times you look at your kids and they don't have a filter. You can see on their faces when you're the most boring thing they've ever seen on planet Earth. You're like a loser to them. You're like, you could be, they're watching paint dry is
If
what you
Jesse were
are.
here, Sean, he would say, "That's you every day, though."
Yeah, it is. Yeah, there it is. There it is. Thank you, Anthony, for
I'm just
channeling.
channeling my
Wow.
inner Jesse.
Yeah, the spirit of Jesse haunts me
Woo,
every
sorry,
day of my life.
I'm not usually that. That's not
Oh,
usually me.
wow,
What has he done to
Anthony.
me?
Why did you do
Uh,
that?
Yeah,
You stooped so low
usually I'm
he's
on
here.
Sean's side. I don't know
he's
what
definitely
happened just
paying
now.
you behind the scenes after that. Um, no, but
Woo.
really, I
That's not
think
true,
there
Sean.
is
Only
something.
baseball's boring. You're not as a
There it is.
person.
There it is. Yeah. How's Canada doing the Olympics right now? By the way, Anthony, is it doing okay?
Not very good.
Is it doing okay?
Oh,
We're
wow.
we're recording. We're literally recording this at the tail end of the Paris
You're
Olympics, so
right.
we just dated this recording a little bit.
You
Yep,
did,
Um,
yeah.
yep, there you go.
but I think there no, but it is something powerful. Like you say, like just that emphasis on heaven. That's a big part of the
Mm,
a push for what Adventism is about. Is this greater picture, this grander picture of the great controversy, leading us towards why did Jesus do all this? Like he's gonna bring everything into communion, into harmony through getting us again, right? The Advent part of Seventh Day
mm,
Adventist.
yeah.
And I think that emphasis is so unique in Adventist education, right? There,
Mhm.
it's not that we take away from like the need for being good citizens here and doing everything to be the kingdom of heaven on earth now, but it gives hope for the future, and we emphasize that in such an intense and focused way in our church that I think is so rich and valuable when done in a healthy way, right?
Yeah,
Mm,
When that end time, eschatology is a beautiful picture of God. It's exciting. We can fill kids and others with hope about reuniting with loved ones and knowing it's just beyond the 80 years you get to live here. Like your life and the skills and development that's happening in your brain now is not just a small blip in time. Like this is going to be for something so
mm,
much bigger and grander.
yeah,
And it just when a kid gets it right, they sometimes struggle to pay attention or to get a lesson that you have taught over and over again. But when you see
mhm,
that seed planted, when you see they grow, it's one of the
mhm.
most beautiful experiences as a teacher
it
to
is,
see
yeah.
how the Spirit can work through through Adventist education. So
True.
um,
Yeah.
I want to ask you about that, Judah life, because as a pastor, I've learned, specifically as a youth pastor, and now I've moved on to young adults, but similar
Mhm.
age groups in that, like a little more with high school for me. You're kind of most of your ministry is just planting seeds, and a lot of times you don't get to see the fruition of it. You don't get to see
Yeah.
the fruit of what you're planting. All you see is like, okay, I'm just planting. I'm kind of planting in the dark. But for you, do you feel like you described it as the mission of Adventist education as educating for eternity, for something bigger, for something grander, that we're a part of, the God story. Do you feel
Mhm.
like you ever get to see the fruition of that? Are there those moments where, a kid will get it and you're like, oh, they're getting it? Or, is it all just shooting in the dark? Because I get that too. So
Yeah.
sometimes as a pastor, I'm like, man, does anything I'm saying matter? So I guess I'm curious
Yeah.
for you, what's your experience been?
It's interesting because with teaching so many non-Adventist students, I'm,
I was about to say.
always wondering, is what they learn here going to stick with them? And I hope it
Mm,
does. I hope it does. A lot of, the change I feel like for an individual happens when they're young. I think I read somewhere that the decisions they make when they're young
mm,
are more likely to stick,
mm-hmm.
when they're older. So
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
I I truly believe in planting those seeds. And I think, that they will come to fruition one day. And it is rare, to see those immediate
Yeah.
changes. But I do have a student who came to me when he was in fifth grade and he just graduated from eighth grade. And when he came to me, he
Mm-hmm.
was coming from a public school and he was he had a lot of behavioral issues and he
Mm,
just bad habits that he had picked up from public school and other places. And I had him for what, 4 years, and he is a completely different kid. When he graduated eighth grade just this
wow.
last year,
Yeah.
he is a completely different kid. He
Mm,
Mhm.
is considerate and kind, and he reads his Bible uh, willingly by choice. Some of his favorite
Yeah.
wow.
songs are Christian songs. Um, he still has his quirks and he has some, things that he has to
Mm-hmm.
overcome. And not everything has, gotten 100% better, but I'm just so proud, when I think of that kid
Mm,
Mhm.
and I think of the journey and I think of, okay, well, maybe he didn't convert to Adventism, but his life changed for
mm-hmm.
sure
Yeah.
by being at our school and
Mm,
being around these students and the teachers that
Yeah.
care about him. And that seeping into the
wow.
home life and, me having to talk to his parents probably every day when I first had him about,
Mm,
certain behaviors or how we can help him or, let's look at it this way, what would help him remember to do his homework. I
mm-hmm.
just all of these things I feel like I can at least say, okay, you know, there's a little bit of change at least there. And hopefully those seeds that I
Mm,
plant, eventually they will take root. Um, but seeing those things like that is just, yeah, it gives me
mm.
such, assurance in what we're doing here in Adventist education. It
Yeah.
I
matters.
really love that you shared that, Judelle, because one of the main questions that was on our mind when we started this series was, does Adventist education actually produce Adventists? And is that the
Mhm.
goal of Adventist education? And should it be the goal of Adventist education just to kind of, it's a big factory and we're just making, putting the stamp on the whatever it is as it comes down the assembly line? Is that really the goal? And what I
Yeah.
hear you saying is it's kind of bigger than that, is that it's not necessarily putting the brand name on, or I don't know
Yeah.
why, like, branding someone with the Adventist logo came to mind. That's really dark.
On the
Um,
forehead. It's got to
We're
be
on the forehead
that,
and on the hand,
the
brother.
seal of
Is that
God.
the
Seal of
seal of
God right
God?
there.
Oh no.
Yes.
We're all gonna get fired, I think, maybe. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Right.
It would have happened
But
by
yeah.
now, Judelle. Judelle, there's probably 1,000 things that
Oh, yeah.
it's all good. We've got immunity.
Right.
We got
But yeah,
no.
Tenure. We've got tenure.
Tenure? Oh, I don't know if I have tenure yet at my current
I don't
job.
have tenure yet.
I just finished week
No.
1 or year 1 today. So
Oh, wow.
but all this to say, thank you. All this to say, um, it seems like what you're saying is that it's actually bigger. That there's like if a kid who comes through the school, if their life has changed in some significant way, you feel like you've succeeded. Is that accurate?
I feel like I have, yeah, and I've struggled with that question, should they be Adventists when they leave, or is that the end goal? Do we wanna
Mm,
convert everybody into Adventism? And I had some really good
right.
talks with our pastor about this too. Um, it's I feel like it's a bigger question than I even have answers for because I feel like I'm still searching for those answers.
Yeah,
But I think
that's
if
fair.
if we can lead them to Jesus and if their lives are changed as a result, then I think
Mm,
there is some success in that. And maybe that is the
mm,
goal. And
Yeah.
maybe
wow.
that has to be enough.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. I think having at least a grasp, and I think I appreciate you being honest about that, Judelle, is
yeah, same.
sometimes it can feel like in Adventism, not just with teachers, but pastors or leaders, like we have everything figured out for what our
Right.
mission is.
Or we're
And
supposed
sometimes there's
to.
that expectation, like, you have your mission statement as a school. You're at our school, it's the SLOs it's teacher jargon for our student learner outcomes, the SLOs,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
SLO.
yeah, yeah.
And
Mhm.
it's like, each, Adventist school might have like clear bullet point kind of things that go in the student handbook and stuff. And you have those clear missions there. And those are valuable as kind of like a starting point. But a lot of times, being able to admit like, hey, we're on this journey together to figure out alongside each other what this is supposed to look like, and there needs to
Mhm.
be a sense of humility knowing like God's got this. Like if we're listening to God,
Mm,
and if this is really of him, like this school, this church is really of him, like he's going to take it where it needs to, and
Yeah.
I'm just a vessel, right? Like you can do all the training and whatever, but when it comes down to it, like if it's of God, like he's going to lead in both maybe some expected ways, but a lot of times in unexpected ways and
mm,
unexpected outcomes for what that's gonna look like. And I think that is sustainable in Adventist education. I think where we've lost teachers or we've lost a vision in church is when there isn't that room for
mm.
God to move in a way that may be unexpected.
And that's
And
what I hear you saying, Judelle, is
yeah,
Yeah.
leaving room for God to do what he wants.
Yeah. Well, and I
yeah,
feel like there's so much beauty in that too. You don't have to take on the burden of,
Mm,
all of the work on your own. And it shouldn't be.
mm,
God should be
yeah,
working in their lives. And you shouldn't have to take all of that on when we can't. There's no way we can do it on our
mm,
own. It's,
right.
we have to leave it up to God. And there's so much beauty and reassurance in that because sometimes it's just like, I can't do everything. And I just have to let
Mm,
God take it over. Yeah.
mm.
yeah.
True
Yep.
this.
There's seasons where it can be discouraging, or you're just like, I don't know
Yep.
what's going to happen from all of this, and when you're working so hard, right, as the teaching principal, I know you are,
Yeah, I can't
like
imagine.
it's so exhausting. It can be so emotionally and physically crippling, And again,
Yeah.
it's not to discourage people from
Oh,
being
yeah.
teachers, but at the same time, like it's not a joke, like how much heart and soul goes into education.
Judelle has such the demeanor of kindness and peace about her, but
Yeah.
I just know there are times in your week where you're just like, "Why did I do
I'm
this with
done.
my life?
I'm
I'm done."
so done. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe there's not. I don't
No,
wanna
yeah.
project that on you,
There's
but I'm sure
oh
there's
no,
moments where you're
there's
exhausted.
there's times in the year where I'm like, I'm not signing my contract again. This is not
Yeah.
Oh, right.
I'm not coming
And I
back.
think
Bye-bye.
yeah, but I think you have to have those moments, right, Judelle? Like if you can't be honest about where you're at, like when it's just miserable, like it's like you're not always excited. You don't show up to school every day just so excited. Like there are like in
Like,
any
amped.
career, like there are days and hills and valleys that are just,
Oh, yeah.
it's a slog, it's a trudge through,
Yeah.
this valley of despair a little bit, but that's part of it. It's that mix of, again, like you were talking about, this reliance upon God. He's bigger than the situation,
Mm,
and that there's an expectation, like, hey, this is going to be an up and down roller coaster. That's just part of life. Um,
Yeah.
and having that expectation, knowing, I can trust in God. I can rely upon Him as I go through this year. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah,
100%.
you've been an example of that, right? Like, you're in the thick of it as a teaching principal at a small school. And
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like, as we kind of close and stuff, I know that there'll be people listening that are teachers or maybe interested
mhm.
in going into Adventist education. Is there something that, like, is there a message you would say to someone like that that's in Adventist education?
Yep,
We're I don't know exactly when this will come out, Anthony, but some point, this year, where it's probably at the start of the school year, maybe,
yep,
maybe a few months after, who knows? But we're kind of getting to that school season. People are starting to
yep.
go
Yeah.
get school supplies. I was already getting my son Olin his school supplies for kindergarten. It's kind of hitting me like I have to go back to work very soon,
Yeah.
um, which is a mix of excitement and, like, oh no, summer break's over. Um,
Yeah.
but but like, when you look at all that, like, what would be like something you'd share with teachers and
Yeah,
others, like,
and
wondering, yeah,
we should frame it in like what we were saying before, like 60% of NAD schools are like Judelle, like your school.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so what I guess if you had a word, it doesn't have to be like cliche word of encouragement, but I guess what would your word to other teachers just like you be?
Oh man. I feel like I feel like you have to know why you're doing it's such a buzzword in education right now, but know
yeah,
your why.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and I feel like it's more than that. It's not just, well, I love teaching, which should be, why you're going into education, because it is difficult, like we've mentioned, and um it can be discouraging sometimes.
Mm.
But on the plus side, there's so many beautiful moments too. And those
Mm.
beautiful moments usually outweigh those discouraging ones. And I think that's what keeps you
Mm.
in it. And and then just
Wow.
from the Adventist education perspective, it's not just knowing that you want to be a teacher, but it's also knowing that you are being Jesus to these kids. You are showing them what Jesus is like
Mm.
and who he is and how
Wow.
we should act, because that's how he acted, and how he led his life. And it's a big responsibility, but when you look at it
hmm
from that perspective, it's just exciting to be
Mm.
a part of someone's life like that. It's a huge responsibility, and it's a big impact, but it's so beautifully worth it. And like I said, those
yeah,
Mm.
moments when they do come, and they
Wow.
do come a lot, you see a
Yep.
kid's face just light up, or you witness a kid being kind to somebody else, and they're not getting anything, they're not gaining anything from it. They're just doing it to be nice and to be kind and to be like Jesus. You're like, that's worth it. Just that in of
yeah.
itself is worth it. So yeah.
Wow.
That's
Beautiful.
a good way to finish. I don't think we could say it better,
Yeah.
Anthony. That's
You said
that's
it
that's
great.
the one right there.
We're
Yeah,
just gonna ruin it if we keep talking.
yeah. No, Judelle, that's always true, no matter where we're at in the conversation, anytime we
True.
open our mouths. But a little less so because Jesse and Eric aren't here. So
That's
they
right.
they missed out on a great conversation,
Yeah.
Judelle.
If they were
They did.
here, I feel
Judelle,
like they
thank
would have
you.
ruined it. Yeah, they would have.
They would have. This is only good because it's the three of us right now.
Yes.
Um, Judelle, again, thank you for joining us. Thank you
Oh,
for
yeah. Thank you
sharing
so
your
much.
My
honest
pleasure.
experiences. So much prayer and power to you as you start getting ready for your school year. As we're
Thank
recording
you.
this, it's getting ready for that. I know there's so much that goes into that you know most people don't see. They don't see all the hats. They don't see all the time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You are not paid for the amount of hours you labor over those kids. And yeah, from one teacher to another, and to all the other people listening that are going into education and doing that journey, that 10-month journey. We appreciate you, and we know that you're making a difference. This matters. And so we hope that you're encouraged right now listening to this story. So yeah, Judelle, thank you. And for those that want to check out the Pohnpei Adventist School, if you're in the Northwest area, go check out that school. That's
Check
where you
it
got to
out.
be.
Has a great
Um,
principal.
yes.
Yes, it's got. I mean, you got to go. So, Judelle, I know they can find you wherever. I mean, they can check out the website of the school,
Oh,
and
yeah. Yep.
I'm
We're
sure you're
online.
on social media as well.
Yep,
So,
we
yeah,
are.
check out Pohnpei Adventist, you guys. And I think that's it, Judelle. Unless you have
Yeah.
any
Thank you
final.
for,
I think you already said the final words. Tell Paul
yeah,
that we miss him.
I
I
will.
don't
I
like.
will.
I don't want to be nice, but I do really miss. I miss both of you a lot. So yeah,
Oh, we miss you
we should
too.
get together sometime.
Same, Judo.
We should. Yes. Thank you for having me. I am really proud of what you guys are doing with your podcast, and I've enjoyed following you. So thank you. It's been an honor.
Thanks, Judelle.
An honor coming from you, Judelle, because we all know that circle wouldn't have happened without you, and it's a miracle that this happens without you.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Hey friends, you've just been listening to another episode of Seeking What They Sought. I'm one of your hosts, Anthony Leiter, and on behalf of all the guys, we just want to say a big thank you to all of you who have come alongside us in our journey to have honest conversations about Adventism. We appreciate each one of you. As usual, if you haven't already, give us a follow on Instagram. It is kind of like our home base, social media-wise, and if you'd like to stay up to date on the episodes that we're posting or just different things that we're doing, you can follow us there. We're also kind of like low-key a meme account, and we post silly videos and other stuff, so give us a follow. We would love it. Also want to say a big thank you to our patrons, and we're really grateful to each one of you for helping us make quality content. So to each one of you, a big thank you. And if you'd like to follow us on Patreon, you can. There's a link in our Instagram bio if you'd like to support us. Thank you so much. Last but not least, if you could you leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify, wherever you listen, because it really helps us actually in the algorithm to help new people get their eyes on the podcast. So if you could just go in, give us a little, hopefully a 5-star review, but, be honest, that really helps us just in the algorithm, the way that, these things work these days. So we really, really appreciate it. All right, I think that's it for now, friends. So we will see you next time on Seeking What They Sought.